The Department of Justice has sent a bizarre and troubling letter to Elon Musk, accusing him of preferring to hire American citizens over non-citizens for his SpaceX program. Now, according to the DOJ, in March of 2020, a non-US citizen who had asked about being hired in the Technology Strategy Division of SpaceX was asked, "What's your citizenship status?" And DOJ attorney Lisa Sandoval says that SpaceX, quote, ultimately failed to hire him for the position because he is not a US citizen or lawful permanent resident. Now, the DOJ has filed a request with a judge to order SpaceX to comply with an administrative subpoena for documents related to how the company hires. And apparently, what the DOJ, the Justice Department, is trying to find out is if SpaceX engages in, quote, any pattern or practice of discrimination, end quote. So it's evidently discriminatory to prefer US citizens for SpaceX over non-citizens. And I want to ask, who would be so demented as to make this kind of a demand of Elon Musk or any American company? Is it the case that American companies shouldn't give any preference whatever to hiring Americans? And why is giving those preferences wrong? Now, the left has been developing a theory. They do these things by and large in academia initially, and they migrate into the media, then they're picked up more generally in the culture. Several years ago, the political philosopher Martha Nussbaum wrote an important essay. This was published in Boston Review. It was called Patriotism and Cosmopolitanism. And essentially, Martha Nussbaum argues, and I'm quoting her now, this emphasis on patriotic pride is morally dangerous. Morally dangerous. Why? Because she says it can lead to ethnocentrism, chauvinism, hatred of others. And she says that we need to have a higher ideal. What's this ideal? I'm quoting her now. An ideal that is in any case more adequate to our situation in the contemporary world, namely the ideal of the cosmopolitan, the person whose primary allegiance is to the community of human beings in the entire world. So, in other words, our main allegiance should be to humanity, not to Americans. Now, let's start by thinking about this for a moment, because it's appealing on the surface. Obviously, think about the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Interestingly, it doesn't say all Americans are created equal. All men, all persons, all human beings are created equal. And the implication is by their creator, so in God's eyes. We're not going to dissent from that. We agree. So what then is the argument for nationalism or patriotism in a world that does contain these equal human beings who do have these equal and natural rights? I think it was the philosopher Edmund Burke, the author of Reflections on the Revolution in France, who said, and I'm not quoting him, to be attached to the subdivision, to love the little platoon we belong to in society, is the first principle of public affections. And here's what Burke is getting at. Even though we are all human and we are part of a big world, it's very difficult to attach our natural affection to everybody in the world. The philosopher, well, actually the economist Adam Smith a long time ago talked about the natural reaction anywhere in the world when a catastrophe occurs far away. He's talking about a group of people in any country, that could be India, and something happens, let's say in Nigeria. 10,000 people are killed in an earthquake. What's the reaction? According to Adam Smith, the Indians go, "Oh, did you read about that? Hey, Sanjeev, did you hear about those 10,000 people? Terrible, terrible, terrible." And then the Indians go right back to eating their chicken tikka masala as if nothing had happened. It's almost as if an itch in their little toe would give them more trouble than 10,000 people being swallowed up by an earthquake. Now, what this is saying is that not that we deny that we're part of a global community, not at all. But rather, we have a sort of primary attachment to our own family. And then we have an attachment that grows in concentric circles. We are attached to our local community. For many years, Americans thought that they had a primary attachment to their state, and then to the country, and then to humanity. So it widens and grows bigger, but it starts small. It starts with life as you can experience it directly. And this is the point, that loving your country is not ultimately an assertion that your country is necessarily the best place in the world. It might be in this case, but it may not be for others. But the truth of it is our country. And we have a certain type of, just as we have a duty to provide for our family, and a duty to provide for our team, to fight on our side. Similarly, we have an allegiance to our country. Now, in a very interesting book called Imagine Communities, the author Benedict Anderson talks about how a country is an imagined community. It's kind of strange because it's a community. We haven't met everybody. We're attached to these other 300 million Americans, and most of them we know about, but we don't know them. But still, there is a kind of fierce attachment. Think of it. People would not become soldiers and jeopardize their lives. They wouldn't become first responders and put their lives at risk to save who? People who would seem to be strangers. But no, they're not total strangers. They're fellow Americans. And all of this means that there is a lot of truth in the Trumpian assertion that even though we are members of the human community, that in some things, and I think SpaceX is definitely one such thing, it is quite right to put America first.